My name is Nicol with FranNet, and today's conversation is a great one. I want to dispel one of the biggest myths I've heard out there for decades. You have to be passionate about whatever business you buy or start. And over the past 40 years that I've owned, operated, developed, and consulted people with starting their own business, it's the thing I hear over and over and over again. And frankly, it's because that's what people tell us. If you're going to go into opening a restaurant, you need to be really passionate about food. If you're going to start a hair salon, you need to be good at hair cutting and working with those types of clients. If you're going to be a fitness instructor or open a gym, you need to be really passionate about fitness, be a trainer, those types of things. And I don't want to necessarily say that those things are bad, but unfortunately, those can lead to a lot of problems. One of the first things that I see happen when people are really passionate about a business, they tend to work in the business more than on the business. So we've all heard of the proverbial restaurant owner that's in there 7 days a week, working 10 to 12 hours a day, year after year after year. And we find that what's happening is the business is controlling them more than they're controlling the business. And so a few things happen here. First of all, one of the biggest challenges is they can't get away from the business. They have no independence, they have no freedom, and it becomes something that maybe later on they actually dislike. So whatever they started as a passion, they burn out on. The second issue is they can't scale. So, if they're working in the business full time, and they can't pull back from that business and let a GM or a manager run it for them, then it creates a big paradox. They can't grow the business any bigger. They can't open multiple locations. And for the most part, it limits the amount of income they make. And one of the biggest challenges is people don't realize when they go to sell the business is not going to have as much value if they're the owner, operator, and the person in charge on a daily basis. Because if I were coming in to buy someone's business, let's say it's a restaurant, and I said, well, you're the person that works at the front counter, you're the person that all the customer knows, you're the person that is the chef and overseeing the crew and creating all the recipes and everything else, and that creates a big challenge. What happens when that person goes? Do the employees defect? Do the customers leave? Will the business operate in the same way that it was when that owner was operating it? So from a buyer's perspective, that creates a big problem. So when I first started in franchise and business ownership back in 1987, I bought a business that you're probably all very familiar with. It was called Mailboxes, etc. back then. Now it's called the UPS store. And that was one of the first businesses I got into. I was fresh out of college. And to be quite frank with you, I had no desire to work behind the counter of a UPS store. Sure, I was okay with learning how it operated, learning the mechanics of the business. I needed to know how things worked and how everything operated. But me spending my time behind the counter was not productive. First of all, I could hire someone for far less money than what I wanted to make. Two, I could work on the business more than in the business. And what does that really mean? Well, first of all, I could work on marketing. If I wanted to grow and expand the business, I needed to market. So I needed to find ways to be creative. How could I get out on the radio or on TV or in the neighborhood or have some kind of community impact? What were the things I could do? Secondly, I could work on the key performance indicators. So one of the nice things about business is there's a lot of data, a lot of information, a lot of statistics, but you need to be able to work on that. How can I improve my return on investment? How can I lower attrition on maybe my customers or things of that nature? So working on those KPIs is really important. And also, I wanted to provide leadership. I didn't want to be the person that was out there directing every employee what to do every minute of the day. I wanted to direct my manager to operate that business and to work with the employees as necessary, but I needed to be the leader in the business. What that allowed me to do was actually quite interesting. I was able to go on to create, build, and sell over 65 UPS stores. And that actually was really exciting to me. So one of the things I tell people is you need to separate the function of the business from the function of the business owner. So when we look at it, what do people want the business to do for them? Well, first of all, they want to make money. They want a good return on investment. They want something that is stable. They want something that has growth potential. Potentially, maybe they want to open up, many units, or they want to expand more in a different territory. So they want something that has growth potential. Preferably, they want something that's going to give them work-life balance. If you're coming out of the corporate life, or maybe you're working a 50, 60, 70-hour work week, maybe you haven't been able to, see your kids, growing up and go to their games or things like that. Maybe you want to travel more with your family. Maybe you want to do things you're passionate about more than having all your passion coming from the business. So that's the function of the business. And so, as I mentioned, the function of the business owner is to make sure that happens. And the more we can be away from that business versus being behind the counter, the proverbial counter in the business, the more that is possible. Now, I'll be frank with you. It doesn't always happen like that right off the bat. Sometimes people have to go in and they have to operate that business for a year or two, maybe even 3 years, until it gets profitable, until they understand how the systems are working, until they've created a good customer base, and maybe get that business on, what I like to call automatic pilot. But at some point you have to give up control. And that's one of the biggest challenges I see people have when they're passionate. They're like, well, I don't want to give up control of the menu or greeting with customers to someone else. I'm the only one that knows how to, run this business and make it work. There's no one else that could do what I do. And that becomes a big challenge. Like I said, when you go to sell the business, it's funny. I have a great story, but I ended up selling one of my first UPS stores many years ago. And like I said, I didn't work in the business. In fact, I only went in there, a couple of days a week. I would sit down with the team, we would have conversations and so forth. But for the most part, I wasn't, in the business that much. And so when I brought the buyers in, I remember we walked into the front lobby of the UPS store and I was kind of showing them around and pointing things out. And then I decided, hey, I want to take them behind the counter and, show them the back area, show them the office and so forth. So I remember going, I'm like, come on back and, let's go behind the counter here. And the first thing that happened is one of the employees in the store went to me and said, sir, I'm so sorry. This is for employees only. You can't come back here. And these potential buyers just started laughing. And they said, Paige, these people don't even know who you are. And I don't know if that's necessarily a great thing, but it sent them a really clear message. Paige, this business is not about you. It's able to operate without you being here on a full-time basis. And that really created impact on them because they knew that if they bought the business and kept the staff that was in place, they would be able to continue to operate that business in a profitable manner. So that was something that I learned and they learned, and something when I'm helping my clients, we have to look at the end in mind. In other words, if we decide to sell the business, we need to create some independence from the owner being involved on a daily basis. So I know this might be something that kind of strikes people a little bit odd because we've all heard, oh, you need to be really passionate about what you do and what business you're in. And this kind of dispels a little bit. Now, having said that, when people are going to operate a business and they're going to be involved, at least initially on a full-time basis, it does need to be a product or service you believe in. In other words, let's say it's fitness, maybe you start a gym or personal training franchise, or you get involved in a yoga studio or something like that. You have to believe in that. You have to feel like, wow, this is something that really helps people. It helps people with their health and wellness. It helps people with their fitness. That needs to be something you're excited about, but you don't need to be the fitness trainer. You don't need to be the yoga instructor. If you're going to get involved, let's say in a senior care business, again, you have to believe that you're providing a good service. You're helping families out, especially those in need. If they have a parent or a sibling that needs some kind of assisted living services. So you have to believe that that's important, but you don't need to be the caregiver. You don't need to be the one out there providing that specific service. So when I'm working with my clients and we're out there looking to see what business is fit for them, the first thing I ask them is, what do you want this business to do for you specifically? The second thing I ask them is, do you want to work in this business full time initially, or do you want to start this business with a general manager and work on it part time? And then more importantly, what do you want to do this business long term? Do you want to grow it? Do you want to scale it? Do you want to do multiple units or things like that? And then eventually, if you're going to sell it, what do you want this business to look like? And we have to look at the end in mind. So if you'd like to learn more about how I help people find and start and operate businesses, or maybe explore a little bit about this myth about having to be passionate about the business you own or operate, I'd be happy to help. So after this podcast, take a look. There'll be information on how to connect with me. I invite you to connect with me on LinkedIn or go to other podcasts that I have, any way that I can help. So look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Own It, and have a great day.